Hello, good afternoon, and welcome. Um, as I'm afflicted to do so often, I'm thinking incessantly in the background about a dozen things, and one that floated to the surface, like one of those lottery ball poppers, has to do with identity and dimension. And it's important to understand that it's more than superficial that we judge each other by appearance. If we go all the way back to our origins, it's easy to see that appearance was how we recognized friend and foe in some pretty perilous conditions. And, excuse me, I'm going to prop up so I am not crushing my diaphragm and I can speak a little more clearly. My throat's a little sore, so try to get some wind up in those sails. Anyway, it was critical that we could look at people and say they're from our tribe, they're from a friendly tribe, they're from an enemy tribe, and really be able to stay ahead of the threat, because the amygdala is always scanning and responding to things before we're even really aware of it. And obviously, that's not the issue at hand in most cases in the modern context. However, it is still relevant to know who our people are and who we are best to avoid. And so we continue to scan for threats in the form of appearance. And so it makes sense that we do evaluate one another this way and navigate in the world this way. And it's a reality we have to deal with. On the other hand, it is an initial reality to deal with. It's not the whole reality. And so, while on one hand we need to be aware of how we appear and how we present ourselves in general, we don't have to narrow ourselves down to fit what's in the storefront, right? We can be the whole inventory and just choose what we put out there on display for people to either entice them to come in or make it clear that they're best to keep moving. This shop's not for them. But we don't get rid of all the inventory because it's not consistent with what's in the shop window. And I think this is a problem around identity in the modern age. We've become very conditioned, more than in past times. This isn't all social media. We've been doing this since we've been doing. But with the different technologies and social influences over time, the more we've become alienated from ourselves and each other, and we're out here in a very image-oriented world where that has a great deal of power and influence, we have become conditioned at unprecedented levels to objectify and basically productize ourselves. We're like, this is the product. We can put everything on the can and you can see what the ingredients are and what the nutritional value is, and that's what's in there and that's that. And I think we've forgotten that that's not really how this works. We aren't canned goods. We aren't shop windows. We are dynamic and complex people, and we live in dynamic and complex conditions, and we need to be able to change state and adapt to the varied conditions we encounter. So while, yes, we want to be able to help people have that sort of first scan, this is how our eyes work, as far as I understand it. We don't really see what we see. We get a squiggly shape, and then it starts to fill in with real data and data that our minds produce to fill in the gaps. And that's why we tend to get things pretty wrong, even when we feel rather confident. And I think this is what happens with meeting people and getting to know them, is we have this squiggly image and then we're like, wait, that doesn't fit, and we have to kind of fill it all in as we go. But what I find we do more and more now is edit that out and try to suppress, deny, disown these parts of us. I got lighting issues. Please hold. Okay, hopefully that stabilizes the lighting. We end up really disowning parts of ourselves so that we don't cause any dissonance for anybody else, and that's a shame. And I'm not saying we go out and we bear all that we are to all the people all the time. That would be dysfunctional and burdensome to self and others. So that's not what I'm proposing. What I'm looking for is that middle ground between shrinking ourselves to fit this prepackaged notion, this image we're trying to promote and live through, this sort of avatar or representative that we have to cultivate to operate in the world that's legitimate. And yeah, we do want people to like encounter and comprehend us easily at first, but we cannot lose the depth and the dimension of who we truly are because it's perhaps incongruent or inconsistent. And it's hard to own that when nowadays, go back, I think 15, 20 years ago, you could know a person's position on a particular issue, but not know their position on 4 or 5 other possibly unrelated issues. Now, if somebody tells you their position on one issue, politically, socially, odds are you know the other 4 or 5, whether they're related or not, because we're sort of expected to take it as a package deal. I believe this politically, so I drive this, so I dress this way, so I wear this hat, so I eat these foods, so I go to these events, whatever it is. All of a sudden, I think this about this, that about the other, and the third about these things. So it all comes on like one little bundle, and we say, okay, this is me, this is how I am. And when somebody tells you their one position, or you see what they drive, or what kind of hat they wear, you kind of know everything about their worldview. And I think we've gotten a little soft, and we've gotten too accustomed to people being simple little package deals of pre-digested understanding, like, oh, okay, you look like that, so you're like this. Look, I just said why that's useful, but it's also limiting. Anything taken to an extreme loses the potency of its inherent virtues. And I think that we've lost our potency, we've lost our nature, our depth, our diversity, because we're so fixated on being able to identify as. And okay, we're entitled to feel strongly about our role and our place in the world, our desires, drives, gifts, limitations. We need to know this and be able to represent and live through and by that. But when that becomes constrictive, when that begins to strangle out the essence and diversity that exists within each of us as individuals, that costs everybody. I've said it before. What we have within us isn't just for us. It's for the collective, and we're going to be affected by and impact the whole of our species in some way, most often indirectly, sometimes directly, and sometimes in ways that seem insignificant but can still have an impact in the long term. And by hiding our light, by shrinking down, by trying to fit into this little label we've created, we lose ourselves and so much of what we have to offer to the world. So whether you're more selfishly minded and you want to be the most you can be, or you're altruistically minded and you want to have the most to bring to the world, reducing ourselves to this simple singular dimension of easy to represent, almost soundbite identity is going to limit the possibility on both counts. And I'm here exploring possibilities, seeking better ways forward. And as we go forward, I hope we will find the self-knowledge, the clarity, the conviction, and the courage to come and bring more of who we are, even when it doesn't make sense. I am just an absolute tapestry of incongruence and contradiction, and yet there's a consistency and an integrity to it that I can trace down. And if people are willing to come and take the ride and be open and be curious, they'll find the way that all these odd pieces fit together. But we also have to be more curious about each other. This is another thing that comes to me more naturally than fully embracing and representing who I am. That's been my life's work, to figure out who I am, what are all these pieces, how do I bring them together, how do I get them to work sort of as a team, or in complement, that there's another product entity that emerges from that. Not product, because this is what I'm saying, we're not products, but it produces this other entity, let's put it that way, that I can then bring to the world, that people can just about wrangle with what I present, but then they'll they would need to bring their curiosity and their patience to come and really understand that. And it's through that process of coming to understand each other that we form real bonds. There's so much below the surface that even people who are friends, who know each other in some capacity, may not be aware of. And there's so many missed connections, so many missed opportunities to really form more substantial and deep understanding and connections through that again we're being sort of corralled into this unidimensional prepackaged flat little, it's like a trading card of who I am. We're not trading cards, we're not canned goods, we're not shop windows. We are people. We are complex and dynamic organisms in complex and dynamic circumstances. And I think that it's one thing when we're children or adolescents or even young adults still fumbling around and getting the shape of things to get caught up on that. But I think that as we go forward and mature in life, it really is important for us to develop the skills to bring a more complete, cultivate and develop, and then bring a more complete version of ourselves to the world, and to come with the curiosity and the patience to try and unfold what other people bring to us, so that we can really have deeper, richer understanding, stronger, healthier bonds, through that healthier communities and people within that, and just so much more possibility in the big kettle of stone soup. We all have something to bring. So this is me saying to not go gently into that good night of unidimensional simplicity, but to really fight for our dynamic natures and bring them forth and bring them to bear in the world as best we can. This is what self-actualization is. And so I hope that we can all actualize further, bring more, connect more deeply, and all benefit from that process. All right, that's my rant on that for now. Thank you so much, as always, for coming along. I hope this affords some useful insight, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next round. Thank you. Bye-bye.